part of spirituality, in fact, a very important part is widening that domain of what we're conscious of, what we're actually aware of, right? Um, Even if you think in terms of we've all heard, and I've even talked about teachings about a kind of realization where we experience ourselves to be the totality, right? By whatever name we give that. Uh, and that's a sort of a shift of identification when we experience ourselves to be the totality. It's like we experience ourselves to be the very origin. And yet that doesn't mean that we are suddenly conscious of the infinite sort of interconnected connections that bring even one moment of experience into being. Those interconnections are too vast. They're they're literally or seemingly infinite in a world where everything is connected to everything else. Everything is part of what's creating every other moment. This is just no mind could track all of those interrelationships happening simultaneously. So even when we experience ourselves to be the totality, right, in our essence, right, we're still struck by the utter and amazing spontaneity of that totality. Um, Many great spiritual teachings and realizers have talked about how our in our in our essence, right? There's this. That's why they talk about it as the unknown, right? Because the unknown is a way of trying to articulate the experience of the totality, and that even though totality isn't tracking every single little interconnection in every instant, it is being all of that. It is being that, but no one could possibly track all those interrelationships. But of course, to experience yourself to be more of the totality is uh, of course, it does away with the feeling of being sort of either the egoically centered author of every moment, or the sort of helpless victim of the totality, because that's just a kind of momentary experience of identity that is sort of just dancing on top of the totality. So this is a reason why most contemplative practices, in part, are encouraging us to kind of pay attention to a kind of gap. The old ancient teaching to stop, to stop. And stop means to just notice the gap. For a moment, don't try to go from here to there, or up or down, or right or left. When we stop trying to get somewhere, let's say, or attain something, or endlessly improve ourselves, or all the ways that we avoid the gap within the core of our being. It's just a way of saying, just pause that for a moment. And it's like, notice that there is this a kind of gap, and you could give a different terminology to the gap. It's also, I'll often say, just notice the stillness. That's the whole context of any moment. Even movement is happening. It's arising from the subjective experience of stillness. And even movement is a movement that's happening within stillness, right? So even though it sounds quite paradoxical that any movement is actually the movement of stillness, stillness produces the movement, and the movement happens within stillness, and then the movement is resolved in stillness. In the similar way that, say, the words that I'm speaking are the origin of them are in the totality of consciousness, right? And then they come out of that consciousness. They're an expression of that consciousness. And then they almost immediately sink back into that consciousness. So the words almost immediately return to the wordless.